and we will continue with the education budget, and then when we finish that, we'll go back to tribal council budget.
Okay.
Mr. Evans.
I think I've gotten through the learning served, did I?
Ms. Coates had a question.
Yeah, I did. I've been, my questions earlier to Dr. Morton about directed studies had a purpose in mind, and I was able to speak with him on the break as well about two additional line items here, the Connors Nursing Cohort and also the Higher Ed Graduate Scholarship. Now, both of those also, like the Directed Studies Program, are funded for next year at levels significantly below what they, were funded for this year. And I have spoken with Dr. Morton, and he tells me that the expectation on all three of those is that they are going to cap out this year. And so it seems unreasonable to me that they would be funded at a lesser level for the year coming than they were for the year just ending. Particularly the Directed Studies Program, which is funded at a level that is approximately 50%. And that's a project that is growing. I wouldn't foresee any of these lessening in any way in terms of the demand for assistance and scholarships. I think that's always going to be there. And in the case of the Directed Studies Program in particular, this is one that has some real, it is really a potential benefit to the Cherokee Nation itself, after, not just the students. So I would like to make a motion at this time to bring those three things, the Directed Studies Program, to add an additional $465,000 to that, to bring it up to an equivalent to the 2008 level, to add an additional, whatever it would be, right, $78,000, is that right, to the Connors Nursing Cohort, to bring it to the 2008 level, and to add the, $45,000 approximately Higher Ed Graduate Scholarship, to also bring it up to the 2008 level. So they are at an equivalent level.
Second the motion.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Oh, excuse me.
I would just like to hear from Dr. Morton, if possible, on the reason why those initial funds were not included in the budget submission.
What was the question, Councilor?
Yes, I just would like some comment on why those funds were not included in the original equation.
Oh, you're talking about the Directed Studies funds? Okay, now on the Directed Studies funds, that program has just gotten started. Now, if you count on September 30th that all of this year's money does not roll over, then, it would take all of those funds plus more, to carry another fiscal year. Now, we open up again on November 9th to receive applications. We only received one round of applications. There is no way to predict how many applications we will receive, both in November and again in February, because the ones we've awarded so forth are primarily without any advertising, without any recruitment, and so forth. So on that one, it's a number that I flat can't give you. I have no idea. Now, as far as the
was your response, since we don't know that number, you left it at zero to have this discussion, or was it intended to go
to bring attention to the fact that it's a moving target?
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Buzzer.
And the other thing, Dr. Morton, on the Directed Study programs, those studies are going to be where the nation is actually looking for those type of people. So it's not somebody
for those type of positions, and they're going to be high dollar positions.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Ketchum.
On the directed studies program, I did want to answer, I forget who's, I think it was Counselor Sub's question about why the reduction. When we were doing our budget process, there were several 08 initiatives that had not really gotten off the ground. So I talked with the various group leaders and I said, what do you need for the next fiscal year? And at the time, this was one of those programs that I visited with education about, and the idea was it's just getting up and running, and we think that this amount of money will carry us through FY09. The program, if it's successful, will probably expand in future years, but at the time when we prepared these budgets, the thought was that that would be sufficient to cover the needs. An alternative that we could probably look at is they will not be spending all of the 08 budget probably, and we could bring forward some carryover in December, January timeframe if after they've gotten all of their applications in place and find out what the need really is going to be there.
Yes, Ms. Coates.
And again, I would direct a question to Dr. Morton that my understanding was that in our discussion that this is going to cap out, and that there is a demand for probably at least the equivalent. I mean, I know that that's what a lot of the counselors are hearing about is this particular program. Is that correct?
I think that the impact will not hit in November. The impact will hit after the next calendar year. So the amount of funds that are available now may or may not be enough to carry through fiscal 09. But at this point, I have nothing upon which to base a recommendation. I would after November, but that's too late.
What happens if the present funds do not carry through fiscal year 2009? Do you come back to the council for additional funding, or is it a matter of rejecting?
No.
Beginning to reject?
I'd look at possibility of utilizing funds from higher education, if in fact there were funds there, and then I'd go crying to Cali.
Would add one other thing, that once the books are somewhat closed in December, early January timeframe, what's projecting to be a close to $800,000 underutilization of this year's funds would be a good time to go and see, from 935 down to 470, maybe bring that at least up to its 08 funding level with that carryover that's identified at that time, if not more.
Yeah.
And maybe by then have a time to.
The other two programs, the nursing cohort and the Connors nursing cohort and the higher ed graduate scholarship, are not new, right? We've got a track record on both of those, right. And so we could anticipate that those will need to be funded to at least the same level as they have been in 2008.
Yeah. Especially if the so-called non-recession continues. College enrollments grow more quickly during times of national financial adversity than they do any other time, because persons think, hey, I'm going to get qualified in another area. The calls that we receive where persons are just making decisions, thinking about, are in nursing and the technician programs in health. So I would anticipate that nursing will continue at least at the level it is, and it will grow. See, the problem is we have sources for students are pretty well limited, because most of the RN students are going to be commuting students, and they're going to go to Rogers State, NEO, Carl Albert, or Connors, and a few to Bacon. And there's a long waiting list to get in. So we would have a lot more in if those institutions had a place for them.
Can I amend my own motion?
Yes.
All right. I would revise it then, that I would move to increase the Connors nursing cohort by $78,000 to bring it up to 2008 levels, and the higher ed graduate scholarship by $45,000 to bring it up to 2008 levels, and that we will wait on the directed studies program until December to see what
I'll second that.
has to be done then.
And your second accepts that motion? Okay. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Okay. Continue, Mr. Evans.
Okay. The last department in the education division that we'll talk about is the Sequoia High School. Sequoia's budgeting actually is a $680,000 decrease in its budget compared to the 08. However, there are several things that are contributing to that. The high school is reducing its DOI funded carryover by $1.8 million due to the utilization of non-recurring carryover funds from 08. I mentioned earlier about that carryover budget. It's offsetting this decrease by increasing other budgets, such as the Special Ed Title I budget by $786,000. Sequoia High School interest budget is increasing by over $570,000 to a total of $1.75, and that's interest income. It cannot be funded. This budget cannot be funded by interest income alone. You see my comment on there. Similar to last year's budget review, the question remains around justifying requests for discretionary funds while the program income is going up. Compared to 07 actuals, the budget is $3.1 million increase. It operated in 07 by expending a total of $8.2 million, excluding the construction dollars, including all sources of funds. This budget's requesting $14.5 million, with $13.7 or 95% being federal dollars. And I requested that the program be able to provide some type of a justification for continuing to request nearly $600,000 of discretionary funds when federal funding is going up by over $6 million since 2007. And you can see the detail on Sequoia on the pages right behind me.
Ms. Fisher.
So they got a carryover, what, $5.5 million, and they're asking for $600 of discretionary?
You got to take out some of these. Okay, there's a contributor right here. High school interest income. Take no, that doesn't matter.
Could I partially address Mr. Chairman? Okay. One of the items that is funded out of discretionary dollars that falls under the Sequoia High School accounting units is the 7th and 8th grade project. And the reason we started funding that out of tribal dollars is the DOI does not provide for any funding for a 7th and 8th grade. It's all for the high school. So that's $244,000 of the discretionary request. Another 108 of the discretionary is Sequoia's piece of the motor vehicle, the tag money allocation, as is in the legislation that they get a piece of that. So approximately a little under half of that is related to either the tag money or a program that's not fundable through DOI.
Okay, so they're asking for, if we take that aside, out of that $600,000 discretionary money they're asking for, they need half of that 352. Doug, is that in a nutshell? Because they can't use the federal dollars to do what the tribal money can.
Okay, to be specific, let's look at a couple of programs. Okay, like Callie mentioned, you've got the 7th and 8th grade project for roughly $250,000. Okay, you also have a summer student activity for around $300,000. Those two are discretionary funded activities. So the question is, out of their federal funds, does the carryover budget, you'll see it on the last page there, the carryover budget of $2.8 million and the interest income, which is up to $1.7 million, are either one of those funding sources discretionary, and can they be utilized for the 7th and 8th grade project or Sequoia summer student activities? If the answer is yes, then the analysis I portrayed in the review is accurate. That federal funding is going up, but it's not being used for discretionary activities. The gen fund's still being requested. If the answer to those questions on those two funding sources is yes.
Yes.
I can answer partially. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to 7th and 8th grade, I believe the answer would be no, that the grant should not support the 7th and 8th grade, and the only reason for that is there's a congressional moratorium on expanding grades at BIA schools, and it prohibits the use of appropriations for that. So I think that would prevent us using the federal funds for the 7th and 8th grade. The activities, the interest have to be used in the same manner as the grant funds.
For the same purpose. Can't be used for some student activities. We're using
Now,
grant.
student activities, I'm not including that as part of that.
Student activities could utilize
In my view, yes.
self-governance funding.
In my view, yes.
Okay, so out of that 600,000 discretionary.
On the activity fund.
If you looked at it another way,
I'm trying to find money to fund the.
if you looked at it another way, the summer activities fund and the fund that from about motor fuel tax. What did you say about it?
We didn't address the motor fuel tax funds. The $150,000 of motor fuel tax funds. That's just going to. I mean, there's that just says education purposes.
Yeah.
So it's pretty broad in its.
If you, I could live with the budgets if you, and this is going to sound like inflation on my part, it really isn't. It's, I still want a marching band up there, and I'm going to have one. It's not fair how, and 2 or 3 other things. I would agree that it would be reasonable to spend the amount for summer activities from the carryover funds, the $302,901.
So what's that mean?
So that's part of the way.
So what?
That's part way.
So how much left is in extra in that? That we could use?
Now the 7th and 8th grade project's a little different, as Melanie just said. That
7th
one
and 8th
needs.
grade, so that's that.
Yeah, that's
Can't
going to
tell.
have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, 600,000, that 250 roughly will have to stay.
Plus, when you get over into the other categories, such as the special ed categories and so forth, those aren't broken out for 7th and 8th grade. So some of that's 7th and 8th grade.
Okay, that's fine. But the 108,
108 is by legislation, I believe.
Okay. Sit this option. Now, I'm not advocating one way or another, okay? But here's an option. Here's an option. Dr. Morton said that, as he just indicated, the summer student activities would be something that he would be able to utilize either carryover funds or the interest budget, either one. Remember, the interest income budget is increasing from 1.1 to 1.7. It's going up $600,000. Now, either one of those two significant, somewhat Sequoia discretionary funding sources are able to absorb this, then the modification to the budget would simply be reducing one of those two by $300-something thousand, okay? Or booking a transfer out of one of those two accounting units and booking a transfer in to cover the cost of the summer student activities. Instead of the summer student activity being drawing from the general fund coffer, it would be drawing from a transfer from what he just identified that he could do that. And it would free up gen fund for $300,000.
That's what I want to get at, because I would like to have the $300,000 aside for what Dr. Morton's going to talk about shortly on the money.
That would free up over $300,000.
So that's up to y'all.
Okay. So what?
I want to do what he just said by making a motion.
You want to do something?
Yes. Doug, can you say it? But
You want to reduce
leave it in education.
Okay,
what the amendment-
activity by the 302,000.
The technical amendment to the mod would actually be allowing them to reallocate a transfer out of their carryover budget and an offsetting transfer in to the summer student activity. What that does is it funds the summer student activity out of that source instead of gen fund. That's the only amendment that would be required, would be simply a transfer out, which would be a line item reallocation. There's no effect to the total of the carryover budget. It wouldn't go down. Line items would be shifted down to a transfer out. It comes in over here with the summer student activity as a source or a transfer in. Therefore, it doesn't draw out of the coffer of gen fund.
Okay, Ms. Ketchum.
I so rarely disagree with my old esteemed colleague here because we're talking about discretionary and federal dollars. My recommendation would be that we would just remove this budget, SHS summer student activities in total, and then those types of activities would be paid for under the existing federal funding out of their normal budgets. I don't think we have to do any transfers in or any of that.
Either way, it gets you to the same place.
Yeah, as I don't want to be mixing the federal and the discretionary with transfers.
That's fine.
I'd like to make that motion.
Typically, our transfers.
The motion is to remove the 302,000.
You are transferring from federal and tribal.
Display as summer student activities. And, okay. Is there any discussion on this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, are we on a specific item right now?
It was on page 14.
The reason I asked, I'd like to make a motion to comply with Hannah's request this morning.
The 1,500 plus the incentive on the backside. I think,
Can we do it now, or?
Yes. So you're going to bring
Done with education.
bring back the motion that failed earlier.
Should be a new motion.
Mr. Henry.
Okay, that would be a motion to reconsider, and Ms. Fraley, you voted no, correct? That would have been on the prevailing side, so it would be proper for you to make a motion to reconsider.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I make that motion now?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to increase the scholarship amount to $2,000 upfront money until an analysis is completed, provided it's completed by November the 1st, 2008, so that those kids won't lose this semester.
So you're doing an entirely new motion. That's not a motion.
Yeah, that would be a new motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would second that motion.
Okay. So the motion is made and seconded to increase all the scholarships from 1,000 to 2,000.
That's right.
Per semester?
For 2,000 per semester.
For this one?
One semester or two, a whole year?
Yeah, one semester until we get this analysis done.
Okay.
Would that be, since we are already past, we're in the fall semester, so this motion is 2,000 for the spring semester of '09, is that correct? No?
For this semester.
Well, everyone's in school this semester already.
So it'd be a rider to their scholarship in essence, that would be fun coming in
If
later.
you're already this is just to tack on to what they've
Yeah, so
got it.
Okay.
Do we have a student Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, Ms. Ketcher, you had,
If it's, I'm sorry, that would technically be an 08 budget change, what I would think. Because we've already made those payments, correct?
Well, unless you made the payment and then.
none of the payments are to be made after.
I guess if the payments aren't made.
Correct.
The supplement too, this semester until we get the study done.
Right.
Check would have to be ran after 10-1.
Yes.
Is that proper?
Yeah, if that's what y'all want to do. Do we just have a head count on what the dollar would quantify out to? I mean, how many of current enrolled
There's
students?
2,400, so it'd be
2,400 are currently in? You have 2,400
2.4
actually in college right now? Okay. No idea where it's 2,400. I thought it was around 1,200.
Okay, discussion.
2.4 million.
Ms. Jordan.
I am so happy to join in that recommendation. Whatever we can do for our young people, we need to do, and there's no better investment than in education. And I'm so glad everybody ate. Everybody's got a clear mind, and we're going to do $2,000, folks. Let's do something really good here today. Let's help our kids.
Mr. Austin.
Mr. Chairman, I just appreciate Councilor Jordan's leadership on the issue, and I appreciate that we take a second look at it. I do have a question. If we do the study in November, do we contemplate we'll do anything other than continuing the 2,000? Certainly, we may raise it, and I guess I'd pose that to the speaker.
That's based on that analysis. If it requires more, then we would have to find money somewhere to.
No one has any illusions that it's going to require less. Certainly
We
not.
can bring it up.
So, and I think that's consistent with our discussion this morning, which is the problem is so large, it's going to take putting some money at it now. And so I'm glad that we have taken a second look at this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted yes on the $1,500 earlier today, and it didn't get passed. I wish I could vote twice for this. Glory. That's all I got.
Ms. Cummings.
I would also add my support to this one. My only objection to the earlier motion was simply the vagueness around where the money was going to come from and how much it was going to be. And I think this is a good sort of what I was calling a stopgap, sort of, or tied over until we can get that information and identify those funding sources. I've no doubt they're there, but I'd sort of like to know where they are exactly before heading into a multi-million-dollar obligation. So I too would support this.
Mr. Busser.
I just want to comment about Dr. Bradley Cobb's analysis about planning. Yes, I think planning is important. We're in the roads program. If we didn't have a planner in there, we wouldn't have a program up there. What I would like to see, and I think Dr. Morton could furnish this to it, I'd like to see the dropout rate for the last 2 years, and then we'll look and monitor the dropout rate when this goes forward.
Mr. Henry.
It concerns me that we're funding students for 6 or 7 weeks and then they're dropping out. Just something needs to be, I need to see something. So if he would provide that to us, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
In that regard, it may be suggested that this extra 1,000 that is going to be given at the end of the semester during finals, right before finals week, and those students that are enrolled get it, instead of giving everyone $1,000 right now and then they drop out.
I like that.
Good idea.
That wasn't part of the motion.
I know, yeah, but I was
She would have to.
Oh, I'm not making, it has been suggested.
Okay. Ms. Fulbright.
I just want to say I support what Speaker Bradley has suggested. I think it will be a really good starting point. Dr. Morton read some numbers for us during the noon break, and it's very interesting. I don't know if he'll come up and explain it all to us here, but we've seen these figures once before. We've met with him several times this past year, pushing for an increase, and I'd like to see us pass this. It's a good start.
Mr. Baker.
Yes, and some of those numbers, and I, I welcome a comprehensive study because I think it's only going to show that we actually need more money than this. But Northeastern tuition alone, 10 years ago when we started giving $1,000 a semester, $628 was for tuition and $372 was for books. Under the present tuition structure at Northeastern, if we give them $2,000, $1,662 will be for tuition and $338. So we're actually giving less for books now than we were 10 years ago in the grand scheme of things. And books have gone up. So this, I totally agree with Dr. Cobb. We're still not there, but we're so much further along than we were if we did nothing. And I just appreciate everybody, thinking it and coming up with solutions that will truly help 2,400 of our Cherokee students that are in college right now. And maybe this will keep some of them from dropping out by making this supplement. And I certainly hope we don't wait till the end of the semester, because I'm getting calls right now with gas money calls and kids telling me they're going to have to drop out because they don't have the money. So I just praise the Lord.
Well, I echo what Bill Jones said, but I think I would discourage us from waiting until the end of the semester. I mean, I appreciate Mr. Hembry's point, and it goes to Council Buzzard's point that we do have dropouts, but there really is a need now. So I think we should I hope we keep the motion as it is and move forward.
Dr. Cobb.
With all due respect to Mr. Hembry, I'm not in favor of backloading this at this point. I think we're going to do this. Let's figure out, get this done this semester, get an analysis done, and then we can figure out if that's what we need to do next time. I'm not in favor of waiting until the end. Let's just get it done and then figure out what we need to do.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
Next, health.
No. Oh, we'll go back to
sorry. Tribal Council.
Tribal Council. Tab 2.
Okay. Figure out how to.
Tribal Council.
Well, can I ask you, Dr. Morton, one thing about something else? To be short.
Okay.
The
Dr. Morton,
emergency education
we have one other
assistant.
question.
On that emergency education assistant, if it runs low because you're pushing right at it now, would you come back and tell us? Because that's what I get calls on. I'm kind of like rules on. Do you have a little bit of money that you can give me for gas, emergency things?
On the emergency fund that we have in higher ed, that one is being tapped with the greatest degree of frequency since I've been here this semester. And you mentioned those tuition rates at Northeastern. In other words, the difference between fall semester of 2001 and the current semester at Northeastern will be in excess of $2,000 increase, because those fee increases go up from 7 to 9% per year. So that's hard to keep up with. So at $54.10 back 10 years ago to over $138 per semester, because included in that tuition increase are a lot of hidden fees of about $38.50 per credit hour for fees. See, once the legislature actually approved the tuition rates, but the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education got control of that in 2000. So they approve each year. So it's just a matter of, Connors is going to be 7%, Northeastern is going to be 8 or 9, and OU is going to be 8 or 9.
So you will come back to us if we need more emergency funds.
Yes.
Dr. Cobb.
Thank you. I just want to know, those NSU rates, does that apply to like satellites like Tulsa, like OU Tulsa, NSU Tulsa, when I'm looking at these,
When you're looking at the-
NSU, is this, let's say somebody wants to go to NSU Tulsa or OU?
Same rate.
Same rate, okay, that's what I want to know, thanks, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Evans.
Okay, tribal council. Here's the tribal council's budget. One thing to point out, significant underutilization here, 2008, 1.2 million. And I'll give you an idea of what the majority of that's made up of. Legal services, that was in the budget, as well as auditing services. These are all contract services, by the way. Water rights, I believe the auditing and the water rights is $75,000 each. Legal services, 170, and 100 in the minority legal counsel that we discussed earlier. Also, you notice there's the decrease. Oh, as well as I forgot the 3 vacant positions that have been out there for, as you know, for several years. The decrease in the total budget is in the community assistance that was mentioned earlier. When you look at the tribal council's funding sources, you see that general fund constitutes the lion's share of it, probably over 60% of the total, with the IDC bearing the burden of approximately half of the operating budget of the tribal council, excluding those contract service items that I mentioned earlier. Those particular items, in addition to community assistance, are not split 50-50 with the indirect cost pool. And then the motor vehicle tax is where you'll see the funding coming in for the law enforcement, as well as, I believe, the law enforcement fund. There's also a carryover budget in here, just for information, for Legistar, $64,000. This is carryover funds that was originally appropriated in 2006. Began its implementation in 2007, and the $60,000 is what's carrying over into the 2009 budget. Here you'll see the salary position, relatively flat on its staffing package, holding basically the same salaries and associated benefits for the vacant positions as it has for 3 years. And there those are. So the staffing package itself since 2007 hasn't actually been modified, still holding the same number of positions. The total budget is representative of that decrease, which already identified compared to 2008, is related to community assistance, and it's 30%, $658,000 increase over 2007 actuals, again due to those contract service underutilization for those special items of legal counsel, water rights counsel, auditing, special project needs, things that were not utilized in 2007. That completes my review for council. Do you have any questions?
Yes, Ms. Watts.
Thank you. I'd like to make sure that our general assistance monies is still in the budget.
It's not in here. It's not in here. It was submitted, but it was not put in.
I'd have to make a motion to resubmit that monies. I will second it with an amendment, friendly amendment. I would like to raise it to $25,000, and I don't want the legal fees to roll over into it. If you don't use your legal fees at the end of the year, are they even in this year? That carryover's done in January.
Yes, correct. That's correct. We're not at that point to even bring that $10,000 forward, so you just...
But it not roll up into the money like it did this year. I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Okay. Mr. Lee.
That rollover is by legislative act, specific legislative act. Yeah, it is. I'm quite sure it is.
January?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's by legislative. Let me check on that. If it's resolution, you can do what you do, but if it's a legislative act, that legislative act will have to be amended. Let me check on that right away.
Okay. Would that preclude the body from taking action, though, on what the motion is right now?
They can increase it.
And then if that's determined that it is in form of a legislative act, they could, if so desired, amend that act next month.
Okay.
Then hold us up.
And the motion's been made to increase the community assistance to $25,000 per council member. and not to have a rollover of legal fees later in the year. Mr. Ross?
I just, was that the motion to address the legal fees if it is in fact in the statute? I just want to make sure that the motion does reflect that.
Well, that is,
$129,000. What I need to take off the end of it?
so you're going to amend your motion
To leave off the,
to only have it increase, put in 25,000 per council member.
yeah,
For
and we'll,
community.
That the future actions are we do not roll over legal funds. That's the way I understood it.
yes.
And we'll have to may have to take additional steps, that's fine. But the reason we're increasing is that we don't also get the legal funds somehow.
Okay.
We're going to bring it to them.
Okay.
We're going to bring it to them.
Okay. But the motion was made to increase, put in the 25,000 per council, and with the intention of not rolling over any legal fees in the future. So that we can work with. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried.
Okay. Any other questions on the legislative branch budget?
Any other questions on the tribal council? Okay.
Okay, the next division would be the health service division. Of course, our largest service division. And these numbers will be significant in comparison to what we've looked at so far. Let me get my...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just wanted to mention the Attorney General is available to come over. We had said this morning that you had some follow-up questions and wanted her back this afternoon. Do you want to do that now or start into health?
How long would it
Let's give her,
Pardon?
let's give the Attorney General.
Okay, how long will it take?
Maybe I can get through health by the time she gets over here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go call her and she should be okay.
Okay, and we'll continue with health.
Okay.
The health service division is not going to have a lot of surprises to it, as you all know. The obvious takeover assumption of the operation of Hastings Hospital is driving significant variances in the budget. And you can see it here in this first chart, where it's totaling upwards to $188 million in the service division. That is a $44 million increase over the 2008 resources available for health services. And that's the 60 of Hastings reduced by the one-time construction cost of $15 million. That's the reason we're not, that $15 million construction one-time non-recurring is the reason you're not seeing the whole $60 million increase. The $42 million that's projected to be underutilized of the 2008 funds, $13 million of that is in direct care, $9 million is in contract health, and $11 million in community health. I will comment that the contract health $9 million that's being projected in the statements at the back, keep in mind that the referrals for contract health are utilizing the entire referred treatment estimate is utilizing these funds. So in other words, when a referral occurs for a particular treatment that's going to cost X amount of dollars, that whole X amount of dollars, regardless of the time needed to treat that patient, are all set aside and encumbered at that time. So even though it may show it's unexpended, yes. Is it unobligated? No. Huge difference. It's an issue we've been dealing with for years because the RPMS system is, as it walks across over to the Lawson financial system, those obligations are not being representative as an encumbrance in Lawson, therefore being portrayed as being utilized because we can't book an encumbrance as an expense. It's just not at that point, and GAAP won't allow us to do that. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that fact that don't get too far out there that $9 million contract health's you're not going to get expended. Well, it's probably going to get obligated. It'll get expended when the patient gets its treatment. $30 million from the year past Those two right there, the 30 million in 07 and the 33 million in 06. All of the 06, 29 million of that 33 is related to the new clinic bond package. Okay, so it's that pretty well explains that. The 31 million, 10 million of that is the Muskogee Clinic in itself. And then the diabetes treatment and prevention contributed to 4.5 million that actually rolled over into 08 for expenditure. And community health had 8 million that was unexpended in 07. Now 07, remember, is an actual column here. That bar chart is actual numbers. That's not projected. Community health is an area that seems, I mean, there's several programs in community health, and that particular department does have, you'll notice when we go over in detail, it has a lot of underutilized budgets, and I'm not about to be able to stand up here and explain why, but that particular department, for various reasons, once we look at all the programs that community health administers, then it's probably going to give us a little better feel for why are they having such a huge number of dollars that are going unspent at the end of each year. At the funding source level for health, obviously the IHS is off the chart. Nothing else even comes close. And you can see the 56 million increase 09 over 08 on that visual graphic. Here's the salaries and benefits, and you can see that there's significant impact there. Keep in mind that 152 tribal hires are coming into play here on this 09 budget that were not in 08. The $3.5 million vacant positions, 89 of those are in direct. There's 89 positions that relate to that, and 49 of them are in direct care. Not Hastings. There's none in Hastings, but all the other clinics have 49 vacant positions at the time the budget was prepared. The community health had 17 vacant positions, and the group leader had 11. And you'll see here are the head counts associated. If I can get this thing to cooperate. There we go. So you can see the health service department, not only on resources, but staffing and everything, all aspects of that service division is taking a significant increase due to Hastings, as well as some other activities. I will note that the third-party billing projections going up this next year at a nice pace. In addition, so they're obviously expecting a lot of synergies and efficiency improvements through the pulling together of the resources of Hastings, as well as the Cherokee Nation billing department, which is continuing to get better year after year. The administrative support, we can go into the actual departments now. The administrative support's budgeting a $500,000 decrease compared to last year's budget. It's reflective in the MIS department and contracts department of health, slightly offset by an increase in the billing groups. It's $333,000 increase over 07 actuals, and that's related to the billing group's budget reflecting that increase in 09. The clinical support service group has the significant decrease of $6.5 million decrease, and it's due to the non-recurring Gen Fund monies that was appropriated in 08 for contract health service out of 07 carryover. It's a $1.8 million decrease compared to 07 actuals, and it's also related to non-recurring funding for contract health service. Now, the community health department that I mentioned, preventive services, it's budgeting a $1 million increase, which is only a 3%. And it's primarily in the WIC program, which constitutes $800,000 of the $1 million. The budget also is $9 million for community health over or an increase of the 07 actuals. Significant increase over 07s related to the DHS funded mini path program or grant of $3.4 million, and the anti-drug network grant of another $3.5 million. So there's $7 million of that 9 just in those two grants. The next department is the actual direct care, which is the lion's share of the funding. $69 million increase over 08's budget, taking it up to 180 something million. It's a 122% increase over the current year budget. Obviously, it's related to the Hastings Hospital, which accounts for 67 of the 69. 152 of the 176 new positions are tribal hires, again. And it's reflecting 49 vacant positions and 8 new positions. for direct care total positions of 714, plus the MOAs and IPAs that are not in that number. The executive director group leaders, the last department we'll talk about, it's budgeting a $19 million or 66% decrease from 08. The Muskogee and Nowata Clinic capital expenditure accounts for $11.5 million of that $19 million decrease, with the removal of the health equipment replacement fund for the equipment fund for another $4.5 million, as well as a decrease in the discretionary funded cancer and diabetes treatment and prevention budget being reduced by $3.7 million, which, as you know, is related to the tobacco surtax. It's a $26 million decrease compared to 07, but again, it's the 3 clinics one-time capital expenditure funding that's causing that decrease. That completes my review of the Health Service Division. If I can answer any questions.
Mr. Henry?
Just as a matter of housekeeping, if you indulge me, Mr. Chairman, on the community assistance, that vote would not violate Legislative Act 4303. However, there is a resolution 3105 that dealt with legal fees and said that if you didn't expend them, it rolls over. So therefore, the motion was correct. You don't have to amend the law. However, as a measure of housekeeping, I would recommend that we amend this resolution, and so we don't have that resolution hanging out there.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded.
Point of order.
Yes.
Would we not have to amend the agenda to consider that resolution?
What I would recommend is just make this an agenda item at the next Rules Committee, and it's a simple little amendment. So.
Withdraw. Okay. Motion's been made to second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. So we'll be sent to Rules. Okay. And the Attorney General is not here yet?
No, she called her. She should be on her way shortly.
Mr. Hoskins.
Chairman, I had a question on health that if it's not too late.
Okay, no.
Mr. Evans?
Sir?
I have a question about, I stepped out, so I'm not sure if I'm jumping ahead or was left behind, but on administrative support, page 3 on health, there's the CHS Return to Work. That's the Return to Work program that funds certain contract health claims that are connected to a loss of work. And again, it's on page, looks like page 3, clinical support services, administrative clinical support services, about quarter of the way down. CHS Return to Work.
That budget didn't exist in 08 either.
That exists in 08. That program still exists.
That program still exists. In 2008, we rolled it all together into one contract health accounting unit, so it's all administered out of the one unit.
Okay.
That one line right above it.
Okay, very, very good. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, sure. Ms. Fisher.
Can you address under community health prevention services, direct care, the total direct care total projected was 43.7. We budgeted 56.3, which is roughly 13 million. What is direct care consist of?
Direct care consists of Bartlesville, all the clinics.
Is it employee salary?
Sure. All the employees that work at the clinics.
Operating expenses?
Of the clinics, yes.
And these are projected out to the end of the year, right?
Yes.
So we're going to have a $13 million carryover in our clinics? I know it'll take too long to do it, but at some point in time, could you run the numbers to see if that 13 million is in the salaries or other operating expenses or what have you? I'm just curious about the carryover consists of as well.
I
Thank you.
can do that.
Okay.
One thing I might comment on, keep in mind that typically a lot of one-time purchases for supplies or replacement equipment, or file cabinets, or chairs, or desks, things that you don't buy every month. Typically, a lot of the programs, especially these large operating programs like clinics, will wait till late in the year to purchase those to ensure that they actually have adequate budget to do it. So what it's going to do is it skews a projection. Do I think that they're going to have 13 million? I don't think it'll be that high. I think it'll be more around 10.
Okay, but that's what concerns me, is that we're leaving $10 million there on care when I've got people being turned down for contract health because we're out of money, or I'm not having doctor spaces filled. But everybody's calling me up on the phone telling me they don't have a drop-in clinic and we only got 2 doctors, you know. I get tired of them phone calls when we're leaving $10 million on the table.
Well, Muskogee Clinic, out of that 13, half of that's the Muskogee Clinic, driving that projected remaining balance.
Okay. So that'll make it down to half.
So, you know, I think there was a ramp up throughout 08 at Muskogee Clinic, even though a full year's worth of funding was laid on the table for this year. You know, it takes a while to get up to that level, and there's going to be funding that's going to be unutilized. But once we know what that is and the carryover comes on, then, you know, even today, I mean, we're halfway into September. I can get you a whole lot closer projection than I could with actuals through 7/25, but I wasn't able to get it throughout these books that quick.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions related to health? Mr. Sullivan?
See that Melissa is here now, and I was wondering, I had a question on the ambulance service. Noticed that there's been a significant increase over the last couple of years in that department, and I'm just kind of curious on some of the requirements there on that operation, and probably have made a follow-up question later.
So on 06, it was 3.1, 07 was 3.4, and 08 was 3.9. Is that what?
Well, I'm just saying that in the one analysis, the ambulance services was in 07, the actuals were like 2.8. And then, you know, we don't have we've got the 08 budget.
Right.
And then this year's budget is 4.2 million. I was just curious on what, is there an expansion there, or is it maybe just increased operational cost, or? And this is just for this local year here?
It is. Well, and we have a station at Oaks. Right. But that's under this unit here. There's not an expansion planned, and there's not an expansion included in this. Without, and I can take a minute and look, but I assume I assume the 200,000 increase, it's a 5%.
It's a 5% increase over this year's budget.
Okay, so 3% of that is merit increases, and I'm not sure the other 2%. Right. I think, Counselor Soap, that a portion of that increase is due to overtime issues. I think in the year before last, we didn't have enough overtime budgeted, and one of the reasons we have to budget more overtime this year in EMS, and you all may know this, but if you read anything nationally about EMS, EMSs are hurting all over, and part of the problem with overtime is that about 9 months ago, the fire department implemented a new rule where all of their personnel has to be paramedics now. And so they offer, you know, I think, well, one is they work 24, they're off 48, and then they offer a fireman's retirement pension type plan. So they're recruiting a lot of paramedics from EMS services all over the country, and we're having, as well as other EMS services, are having a hard time
recruiting, and paramedics by nature will hold a couple of jobs. So they'll work for, this fire department, this EMS service, or 2 EMS services. And when you have somebody that calls in, then sometimes it's hard to get a response for people to come and fill in, so you end up having to pay overtime. So I'm assuming the 2% increase, without just going and researching exactly what that is, that it's related to some overtime issues.
Doug?
Sir.
On the diabetes grants, I see that we've had a decrease in budgeting on Stillwell, Salsal, J, Salina. And I see that over here in actuals, we actually spent more than what we budgeted for in 08. Is there any good way we can replace those funds and bring them back up to 08 budget?
I noticed that too in reviewing that, David, that it was odd that programs that are actually utilizing high 90s to 100% of their funds actually experiencing a slight decrease. If you look at the diabetes grant as a whole up above, keep in mind that that diabetes grant that does not have anything else after it, the $4.1 million, $4 million budget for 08, it's projecting out at 3.3.
It's spent actually though more than 4.136. Is the 07 actuals?
The 07 was, yes, significantly higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't answer why the diabetes program, the grant award may be decreasing.
Well, I think it may have to, the grant award is 6 months off. Just a second, we're trying to answer that.
Okay.
This budget, Mr. Thornton, appears not to have all of a partial year of carryover. This grant year does not line up with our fiscal year. Okay, it's April to March. Right? April to March. So it ends in March. This is 1 year worth of funding, but we're going to have a partial year of carryover, okay, at 9/30 that's not in here yet. Once the 9/30 fiscal cycle ends and we know what's left out of that grant year, then that will come forward.
The budget will be on.
I know in the past we subsidized that program, so I didn't think the money was funding that.
But it appears that the health department will be bringing a budget amendment modification forward sometime probably after March, April or May, after the new award comes in for a partial year.
Thank you.
Ms. Fisher.
Oh, I know. Community Recreation Center.
What page are you on?
Page 3. I had talked to another council about it because at one time we were talking about wanting to have something like that in our community. Can somebody elaborate on that?
That's the gen fund budget.
So they're only using like a third of it.
Well,
Or do we just need to get with Melissa maybe and tell her that one of our communities would, that'd probably be a better way.
Well, this particular budget, keep in mind, is on this report. Its funding request is about $70,000 more than it was in 08. 08's projected to only spend about $260 out of the $700, but it's not requesting any carryover. So this program is requesting of this body to be funded slightly higher than the 08 level, and is not asking for any of its unspent funds from 08. Okay, so these would be discretionary dollars that would just lapse at the end of the year like normal and go into the big carryover number that'll be known in January. Now, where we run into a problem, I should have said this probably at day one going into this. Anytime discretionary programs significantly underspend their gen fund budget and continue to request at the same level as last year, keep in mind, those have already asked for their operating level for the next year. If they come back and ask for their carryover, like they owned it, okay, then it's going to be a significant increase in operating budget that we don't have any recurring revenues to cover the following year. It's very careful how we handle carryover. That's the reason. So it's exactly the reason why we don't put carryover on the table for recurring programs, because that'll happen. That's why we always look real hard if we have any discretionary programs coming in these mod packages every year that's asking for carryover when they've already been funded at their full level. And theoretically, that carryover should lapse like everything else does in gen fund at the end of the year. No one owns it, goes into the coffer, comes back out for normal appropriation.
Mr. Buzzer.
Yes, Doug, I had questions. Just some real quick answers, and maybe Melissa could do it on page 12. Not in Our Nation, Community Anti-Drug Network, Many Paths. I take it these are all funded out of the drug fund, is that correct?
Those are all DHS funds.
Yes.
Yeah, those are all DHS funds.
And could we have just an explanation of what they are real quick? Like Not in Our Nation, what's that for? And Many Paths, what's that for?
Not in Our Nation is the anti-methamphetamine task force. And Many Paths is the Access to Recovery grant, the ATR grant that Behavioral Health has for treatment.
Okay.
You know, the $11 million one they got, that's like three something each year.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Jordan.
Yes, ma'am. Just out of curiosity, on the ambulance service, I see what their cost is, but I know that they charge for their runs and their services, and I just wondered what funds they generate on a yearly basis.
Very little. I think it's approximately $700,000. It's very hard. EMS ambulance service is a very hard service to collect on, and I mean, I guess we can all speculate why, but I assume it's because the service has already been rendered, and so it's sometimes hard to get people to pay those bills. I mean, I know we bill for Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance if they have that. Some of those services are not covered under a third party. And then, you know, the ones that are non-eligibles, we also bill the individual. So, and we do have we contract that billing out.
And I'm by no means unhappy with their service. They're a great need for the rural area. And we do also have them forgive the debt if there's no way for our Indian people to pay. I believe they do forgive a certain amount of that debt.
If you're an eligible beneficiary, then you're not ever billed for that service. I mean, if you have third party that covers that service, we bill it, but we never bill you as an individual.
And I knew that we were not there for them to be a moneymaker. I knew it was the goal, of course, is to make some money, but the greater service is to the rural community, and I was just curious about what they were taking in.
I think it's about $700,000.
And I would assume that goes into does that go into the gen fund, or does that go into health, or?
It goes back into the program.
Okay.
Mr. Buzzer.
Yeah, Melissa, I have one more question.
Okay.
And you probably got it in here, but did we fund dentures and eyeglasses funding in?
It's all rolled in. Contract health is all rolled into one accounting unit.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions on the health? We will take a 10-minute break. Pardon?